Okay, United States History 1, this is the Jazz Age, and we're going to talk a little bit about the new morality. Now, during the 1950s, kind of the best example of this idea of a new morality kind of can be seen with the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley. Now, Elvis was a kind of a scary figure for adults to parents during the 1950s, where he opened up some doors that were kind of scary. Now, Elvis, for instance, on his first TV appearance, Elvis was not allowed to be seen below the waist on television. Could not show Elvis's hips because, again, the older generation, the more traditional folks, believed that was going to be a problem for our teens. African American clothing, African American music. Elvis kind of took the best of African American clothing music and kind of made it his own. So here you have a white guy that's singing African American music, wearing African American clothing, and the white kids love it. So again, this was a real concern for parents, for adults, for those more traditional folks. Rock and roll music, again, was seen by those people that were traditionalists as bad for the teenagers, bad for young people. So in many countries, many towns and cities, rock and roll was outlawed. Now, during the 1920s, just like Elvis in the 50s, there was this new morality. Whereas in the 50s, Elvis Presley was this new morality, and there were very traditional views. In the new morality of this time, again, we begin to challenge the more traditional ideas. And this new morality also glorified youth and personal freedom. Now, in the 50s, you had Elvis, and Elvis was part of that new morality, that symbol. Now, in the 1920s, you had what was called the flapper. Now, women, again, began to take risks, change the way they did things. And the more traditional women, were at age 18, they were going to be married and they would stay in the house forever. Where the flapper and this new morality kind of broke away from families. They tried new things. They entered the workforce. They attended college. They wore very, very revealing clothes. They smoked and they drank illegal liquor. So these things were kind of pushing the envelope. And those folks that believed that women should be in the home to take care of the kids, to take care of the husband, the more traditionalists believed that this new woman, the flapper, was going to hurt our country. Now, there were Americans that believed that this new morality was going to wind up hurting our country. Just like in Elvis with the rock and roll, the older, the more traditional people looked at Elvis and said, this is going to be bad for our country. There were some that believed that this new morality was going to wind up hurting America and put us into a very, very rapid decline. Now, during the 1920s, these folks that believed that the flappers and some of the other less traditional things that were happening came from the small rural areas. Okay, and they wind up joining what was called fundamentalism, and fundamentalism was a religious movement. So in the small, in the rural, in the center of our country, you had a movement growing that believed that in these more traditional values, where those that were living in the city, they believed more of this new morality where, things were changing for the better. Now, when we look at, kind of compare this new morality versus the more fundamentalist or traditional folks, here's kind of a Venn diagram. Now, the new morality, they believed in the idea of evolution. The majority of them lived in the cities and used science. And when we talk about science, evolution is science. Alcohol was, a part of life. Women with their changing roles, being educated, smoking and drinking, being more independent. This new morality also believed in the science, and science was a way to better ourselves. Now, those that were living in the country, the fundamentalists, this religious movement, they believed in creationism, the idea that the world was created as it talks about in the Bible. Most of them lived in the rural or the country. Alcohol should be bad. Alcohol was a bad thing. They believed in more traditional roles for women. Women should stay at home. Women should take care of their husbands. Women should not be in the workforce. And it was also more of a faith-based belief, where creationism or religion is you believe in the faith, whereas these new moralities, new folks, kind of believed in more of a science. Now, to kind of finish up, the fundamentalists believed in creationism. And creationism is that the idea that God created the world as it was described in the Bible. Okay? So the fundamentalists, this religious group, folks that lived in the country, believed in creationism. Okay? That we were created as it says in the Bible. Whereas the more traditional, the more radical view, okay, believed more in the idea of evolution. So that hopefully wraps that up, and hopefully, again, that gives you a pretty good idea of what we're talking about.
Made with Doodlecast Pro.